You're back. Probably like, we didn't notice you left. I was away for a little bit. I took a couple days off. Well, hi, everyone. Hi. My name's Karin Alleyne, or Tiny Wine, aka Karin Alleyne. You get it, you get it. And this is the best Bible study. It is where we read this book, this fun, amazing book. And here is the space to just listen to the stories, however you take them in context, whether it's religious, spiritual, nothing. Come, come, come. I sometimes interpret this, well, all the time, interpret these as messages as I would with any book that I read, honestly. Um, so I think someone was guided to write this in a very particular way. Some manipulated, some not. I don't know. You don't like I don't know. So I just open it with a lot of curiosity and fun. Mainly fun. That's the main thing I wanted to have to do here is have fun as I read this book. So welcome, welcome. And as I was saying, I just took a couple of days off. I wasn't feeling the best, and that wasn't even like physical. It was genuinely mental, spiritual even. I was just so down. And I did read this every day. I still stuck to it. So today we're going to go back to something I opened Jan 15th, I think. And we're in the New Testament now, okay? So we're reading stories about Jesus, Jesus. So it's Luke 4. This is what I opened it to. And I think I did ask. I was like, "Oh, I would love a passage about I think it was like love." And it was like the temptation of Jesus. I'm like, "Okay." Sure. And as always, get cozy with me. I was actually lying in bed. Literally, I think it's like 2 o'clock in the morning now, two something Pacific Pacific Standard Time, and I could not sleep. And I was like, you know what I'm gonna do is some Bible study, bro. Oh, that seemed right. Okay, let's get into this. Okay, the temptation of Jesus. Okay, so this chapter of Luke is about I think Jesus 40 days being tempted by the devil. And then also when he goes off and like preaches. It's like I was like, there's a lot happening right now. Um, but it starts off by saying, first of all, Jesus returned from somewhere. And I didn't flip beforehand to be like, where was he? But he returned from Jordan. And now he's led around by the Spirit in the wilderness for 40 days, being tempted by the devil. And he ate nothing during those days. Okay. And it's like, and when it ended, he became hungry. So I always like, whenever I heard this story, I always heard it as the devil tempted him during the 40 days. But then it was like he was led around by the Spirit in the wilderness. Okay, pause, quick pause. Because whether you, let's say, claim, it's like, are you in a situationship with Jesus or a full relationship? You claim him, whether you do or don't, all right? That I'm not putting that into context as I read this so that it's just very open and you can take from it as you please. Okay, that's like super important, even for me as I'm doing this. Um, I have my own beliefs and philosophies around Jesus and that type of service and all things. But right now, I'm just reading the story as it's cool because this is the part of the Bible that does I've like heard the most about, especially in the Catholic Church, and has pushed me the furthest away from it. So even myself, I have to like kind of check whenever I see the word Jesus, like the emotions and things that come up. And I'm like, cool, 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 cool. We're just reading. I mean, mic is okay? Yes. Okay. So, as I was saying, he would return from Jordan, was led around by the Spirit in the wilderness for 40 days. And at the end is when the devil came. At least how it's written here. Okay. He became hungry, and the devil came to him and was like, listen, you're the son of God, my guy. Turn this stone to become bread, to become bread. And Jesus answers, it is written, man shall not live on bread alone. Like, okay, okay. And like that first part, um, was like he tempted him with food, or he was hungry. And like I was also doing these like 24-hour fasts and then eating at night. So I was like, oh, maybe this is why I was like this. I was like, I could relate. But I didn't have anything to turn into anything. But I was like, yeah, I can relate to just having even a craving for something, and maybe you even satisfy that craving or whatever, but wanting something, especially to satisfy like a very like sensory experience, whether it's your mouth, your taste, your touch, um, like what else is there, ear, anything. And the way the response is given is like, this isn't all there is to life. So I was like, oh, okay. Sure. Okay, and then he shows him the kingdoms of the world, okay, in a moment of time. That was very interesting. Showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time, which I was like, if you're gonna pull some tricks out your sleeve, like I'd be like, let me show you like 10 years into the future. Let me show you all the things you can have. And I'd be like just a blink. But it was very interesting. It's like it was particular that he was shown a moment of time, and the devil said, I will give you all this domain and its glory, for it has been handed over to me. It's like, has it? Has it now? And I can give it to whomever I wish. Maybe this is where they get the saying, the devil's a liar, because like, what are you talking about? No. Um, in this context of the book, you're like, that's not true. That's not what was written. Like, this is page 1722. So it's like, of the other like 1721 pages, this that was not what was said. um and then and he says, if you worship me, it shall be yours. And then Jesus answers him and says, it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God and serve him only. And I wonder if like the devil's like, shucks, damn it, if only. And like, interesting, you show someone a moment in time and be like, this is all mine. I can give it to whoever I want. Tell me you're about me, and it's all yours. And I also was just like, maybe it's because it's 2025 now, and like the words narcissist and gaslighting are so prevalent. Because I'm like, if you tried that shit today, you'd be like, I don't know, like I'm just really not feeling this. Like you don't sound promising. I feel like you're gaslighting me into a situation. Like, you can try this today. Although I guess you would try other things, but like in this context, I'm like, no, this would never work. And then the answer is like, that's not what has been written. Again, in these other 1721 pages, it's like everything you just said was a lie. Like everything you just said. Okay, and then he's like, this is where it gets kind of wild, because he led him to Jerusalem. So I was like, I don't know how far. The book also gives such little context on time and space, sometimes in distance, but he led him to Jerusalem and to stand on the pinnacle of a temple and said, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here, for it is written. And he's like, he will command his angels concerning you to guard you, and their hands they will bear you up so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. And I swear, it was almost like, you know when you're telling someone something and then you're going back and forth and then you make a point and then they use that point against you? Because right before that, Jesus is like, "No, I serve only God." And he's like, oh you you want to refer to what was written then? Well, it's also written. So I'm like, pretty smart, bro. Pretty, because, and he quotes, he's like, "For it is written then." If you want to keep saying it is written, let me tell you what was written. That if you hurt yourself, like the angels will come guard you, their hands will bear you. And I was like, bro, now we're it's gonna sound so bad. But I'm like, now we're talking. I was like, now you're starting to finesse. Now you really want to finesse. And this is the third time. And Jesus says, okay, you it is said. So it's like, oh, now he doesn't say it is written. He says, it is said, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. And then it was like when the devil had finished every temptation, he left him until an opportune time. Dun dun dun. So I'm like, oh, this is like there'd be times when I'd be reading, like The Hobbit, or especially the Game of Thrones books, like the ending of a chapter would be on such a cliffhanger sometimes. I'm like, well, I can't sleep now. Like I obviously need to keep reading. And this is something very different with this book because it jumps around, but like he left him until an opportune time because he's like, I'll be back. This didn't work. But I was like, these three things he tempted him with: the food, which was like very sensory, then the idea of, I'm going to give you something, I'm going to give you all these things you can see, right? And then it was, okay, I feel like the third time he was like, if you want to keep throwing the things that you say was written, I'm going to tell you what was written. I'm going to test you on how much you think you know what you know. I was like, oh, conniving, narcissistic. And I just like in that, honestly, I thought about that. I was like, yeah, it'd be like that sometimes with people. I'm not likening them to the devil necessarily, but even for myself, the way I can reason within my own self, it can have this like back and forth conversation of like you say, when you're talking to somebody and then you use what they say against them, or vice versa. I don't know, sometimes just it's very interesting, like smart in a way, and then he left him to an opportune time. Okay, and then the second half of this is Jesus's public ministry. And like, so I'm like, oh, what happens next? He's off. He returns to Galilee in the power of the Spirit. So he's like, bruh. I wonder if he came back. He's like, bruh, you never guess what just happened. And then news about him began spreading. He started teaching in synagogues. And then he goes to a synagogue, okay? And then he's picking up a book and he starts talking about like, so I don't want to read this whole thing, but basically, like, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He anointed me to preach the gospel, to proclaim the release of captives, to recover the sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord. And then he says that to the synagogue. So it's like full, people are listening to him. And even says, like, he closed the book, gave it back to the attendant. And sometimes I'm like, wow, there are moments in this book where they're not this detailed. But now I'm like, oh, you're really painting a picture here. This is a real novel. I was like, he closed the book, and he's like, mm-hmm. And all the eyes of the synagogue were fixed on him. And then they were like, hold on, I have to take a moment. So they were like, this is great. We love what you're saying. And they're asking, hold on, all were speaking well of him and wondering at the gracious words which were falling from his lips. And they were saying, oh, okay, yeah, they were like in awe. They're like, wow. And then they're like, is that Joseph's son? Can you imagine? You're like, I am the Son of God. I am here to heal. And they're like, I'm sorry, you look a little familiar. Are you, is Joseph your papi? You're like, no, no, like besides the point. Okay. Um, and Jesus says something that like I even wrote this down in my journal. He's like, truly I say to you, no prophet is welcome in his hometown. And I was like, oh. And then I went to the other side, which is like one side that's like deciphers this biblical speak, or at least I wouldn't say necessarily biblical speak, but just the way it was written. And it was just like, no prophet, no prophet is ever welcome in his hometown. The same words, but it's like you ever be doing something maybe different, or you have a like something drops into you and you're like, oh, my intuition is telling me this, and you tell somebody and they're like, no, I don't know what you're talking about, or you're just never, not never, but there's instances where you are not taken seriously for what you know or believe, how you think. And I was like, oh, so you do understand what's happening here. Okay. And then Jesus goes off with like talking about like in the days of Elijah, there were 3 years and 6 months when a great famine came over the land, and yet Elijah was sent to none of them, but was, oh, I forgot I have a candle there. Oops. Elijah was sent to none of them, but to the land, to a woman who was a widow. Oh, is that when? Oh, I think we read this. And then he's like, and there were many lepers in Israel in the time of Elisha the prophet, but none of them was cleansed. Um, Only Naaman the Syrian. And I think he was like trying to tell them like there are other instances of people who were led to do things and it always worked out for them. And somehow, and like I was like, correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody like, I don't know. Bitch, you're reading it with you. If you know this, like correct me if I'm wrong in that case. But then the people in the synagogue were filled with rage. And they were just like, we don't like where this is turning out, Joseph's son. Like, hush, hush now. And they got up and drove him out of the city and led him to the brow of the hill in order to throw him down the cliff. But passing through their midst, he went his way. And I was like, what did you have? Sauron's ring? Like, how did you, like, how did you manage to make the slip of these people? I didn't, I was like, they drove him to the cliff. I'm like, okay, this was such a very different time. I was like, okay, it was saying things you didn't like, just be like, leave. You have to be like, we are now going to murder you. Yes, yes. Just very interesting how that happened. Like he was basically being like, no, there's other instances of people who follow the word, and this is what has happened to them. They're like, mm-mm, we don't like, we don't like Joseph's son. Come with us. Come with us as we throw you off a cliff. And somehow with his, I don't know, invisibility cloak, like Jesus made the slip. I love how he's like, he went his way. I was like, ah. And then he went down to Capernaum, okay, and they were happy with his teaching. They're like, yeah, we like you. And then in one synagogue, there was a man possessed by the spirit of an unclean demon. Oh, yeah, this is a part where I was like, what? Okay. And he cried out with a loud voice, let us alone. What business do we have with each other, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. But Jesus rebuked him and saying, be quiet and come out of him. And I was like, what? He was just like, shh. Okay. And then, wait, does it? I think there's another time. Yeah. So it's okay. That was the first time. Sorry. That was one time he rebuked a demon and he quieted, not rebuked, like he quieted the demon, like, shh, just come out, like, be quiet. And then it continues. And towards the end, he does it again, where he's laying hands on people who are sick, and demons are coming out of many of them, shouting, "You are the Son of God." And he would not allow them to speak because they knew him to be the Christ. Okay. And I was like, why would you be like, you don't want them in particular to say that? But then it hit me. I was like, it's like when your enemies, I can only liken this like a period of time in my life where, um, or like a scenario seen in movies where it's like high school, for example, and people are like, the people who don't like you are calling you out of things that you're actually good at, but it doesn't sound nice. Like, okay, you're just a math nerd. And you're like, don't call me that. But you're like, but I am really good at math. It's like, you're just really, okay, fine. You're just so good at English. But when it comes from them, it sounds like it's like, oh, I don't want you to be the one to like hype me up, and I was like, why would he want them? I assumed that was why he wanted them to be quiet of that. Guess we'd have to ask the author for clarification. But that was one thing, like, because he was like, shh, shh, quiet. I don't want you telling people who I am, because like it doesn't sound right. Like, coming from you. And imagine the demons coming out and be like, you're just Jesus Christ. It's like, oh, please don't, not from you. And okay, and before then, he left the synagogue when he healed the first man with a demon. I don't know if anything else happened there. Yeah, just that he started to spread, word about him started to spread. Obviously, as like you're like exercising people in public, they're gonna talk as you make a slip of like this massive mob crowd trying to kill you. Yeah, yeah, things are gonna get out. But right before he clears the second demon, he left the synagogue and then enters Simon's home. And Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they asked him to help her. And I'm reading verbatim, so I was like, very interesting how this language kind of switches up sometimes. New Testament shenanigans. Um, and he asked him to help her, and standing over her, he rebuked the fever, and it left her. And this is the sentence I was like, mm. And she immediately got up and waited on them. Great. I was like, fantastic. She got up and immediately was like, fantastic, I can make dinner now. Thanks. Take that as you will. There's a lot of things about women in this book that I'm just like, what? What? And I don't know if that's a testament to how well she felt, how much she was like, I am so healed, honey. I have no residuals. What do you want to eat? And how nurturing and welcoming she is. I don't know. But yeah, then there's the other demon he clears, and then this is how it ends. Okay, day comes, Jesus leaves, he goes to a secluded place, and the crowds were searching for him. And he came to him and tried to keep him from going away from them. It's like celebrity, like paparazzi. But he said to them, I must preach the kingdom of God to the other cities also, for I was sent for this purpose. And then he kept on preaching in the synagogues of Judea. Last sentence. Like, okay. But it's interesting, like he went to a secluded place. I was like, yeah, I can relate. You ever like, it's like social battery running low. I have exercised demons, I have healed, I have risen people from fever. Like, I need some alone time. And so it's like, yeah, he went and was secluded, and he was being sought after. I was like, oh, and it's not like from his perspective, obviously. I wonder if there was his like journal. He was like, oh, I just need a minute. It's like mid sentence, like, here they are again. I don't know. But yeah, that was chapter 4. The devil tried it. Jesus started off great in one place, didn't and they didn't like where his preaching was going. He made the slip, and then he went to another place and was like, we love you over here. So much so, we won't leave you alone. The demons tried to claim who he was, and he was like, not from you. I don't want your cosign. Please and thanks. Tried to find some seclusion and then couldn't. And then realized, like, no, I gotta keep going. Ah, is that it? Oh, maybe he was like, no, I gotta keep going. I'm on this mission. Oh, so it's like he went for some seclusion, the crowd found him and maybe reminded him, like, no, there's more to be done. And he was like, there is, just not here with you. He's like, you're right. Goodbye. It's like, okay, I can I can relate to a lot of this in the way I'm interpreting of like even having making sure I can speak on myself first before I allow anyone else to to do so. And even if they are doing so, how I respond and how I choose to silence them, it's can be in many different ways. It could be not speaking sometimes. That really did stand out for me when he was quieting the demons saying who he actually was, who he said he was. He was like, no, no, not for me. Like I was like, oh, interesting. And this ending part that just hit me where it's like, oh, whatever it is you're feeling called to do or whatever I'm feeling called to do is like, yeah, there's moments of like seclusion away from it, even to like recharge, but there will be moments where you're reminded like I gotta keep going with this. And it is for for missions. A lot of times what we're doing is for someone else. Even if it's supporting us, it is to support other people as well. There's a ripple effect. Oh my gosh, I had a lot of fun with this. New Testament for the win, guys. All right, that was Luke 4. I swear it's like we read one chapter, and it felt like we went through 7 different books. This is the Bible, bro. It's all over the place. Sometimes, holy. Ah, guys, this is the best Bible study. And I always say that. I say that very, like, for me, it is the best Bible study to be doing this in this space. And I'm like, what I have like 2 views right now in some of my videos. And that also feels really good to have even 2 views, but then it's still just a space I get to explore, and I truly hope it is for you too. And like we keep a comment section just very open discussion. We don't have to believe the same things with each other. We don't, okay? But it's nice to explore it together. That's all. The best Bible study. All right. I did miss this. I'll be back tomorrow for realsies this time. For realsies this time. I thank you guys. I'm going to upload this and then maybe that'll help me sleep. Who knows? Who knows? Have an awesome day, night, however you're watching this. And I will see you again very soon. Ah! Yay, yay, yay. Is the mic still on? I charged it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're good. Good night, good night. I don't want to set myself on fire. Good night.